Joe, the Real World Certifiers introduced a whole new group of people to the world of cable category testing and speed certification, both of cables and equipment. We not only have installers that for the first time have the ability to check for cable category and predicted cable speed, we have companies that are using the Real World Certifier to do incoming inspection of cables and equipment into their buildings. And these people ask the question, what is the difference between a Real World Certifier and a standards-based certifier? Well, a standards-based certifier uses high-speed analog signals to test cables. The Real World Certifier does it with digital signals. We look at particular cable parameters and we compare those to a database that we have stored on the tester. The results are displayed as cable category and predicted cable speed. Now, both standards-based testers and the Real World Certifier can do the job for you, can tell you cable category and predicted cable speed. Both can provide printed reports. So where do you use them? Well, if the job you're working on does not require a standards-based tester, the Real World Certifier does a super job. And if the job you're working on requires a standard-based tester, use the Real World Certifier as a screening tool. Equip all of your people with a Real World Certifier. Screen the cables first. Then when the expensive certifier comes in, you know that person's only going to have to make one round trip and they're out of there. How do you compare the Real World Certifier to standards-based certifier?
First, let's look at why we want to certify a cable in the first place. Cable installers install cables and they want to assure their customer that the cable has been installed properly and the proper cables have been used and that the cable installation is going to work for the end customer. The end customer wants to know that the same things. He wants to know that the cable's been properly installed, the proper cables have been chosen, and that it's going to work for him first time. Now, if there is a problem, one thing is not going to change. The cable installer will always be the bad guy.
We always see that, don't we?
Yeah, the cable installer is the low man on the totem pole, and no matter what happens, the cable installer will be blamed.
Right.
So what we've done is we've added some tools to the Real World Certifier to help the cable installer solve the problem. So when his customer calls up and says, your cable doesn't work because I can't get my equipment to work, therefore it must be your cable, the cable installer can go to the site and check out the customer's equipment. He can find out why the equipment isn't working as quickly as the customer would like. Now, if the customer is trying to run at a gigahertz and he's connected to a 100 megabit hub, the Real World Certifier will immediately identify the problem. Now, before, the cable installer would have to spend a lot of time. Before he had the Real World Certifier, he would have to go in and install a parallel cable, or what they call a sister cable, and then plug that into the same user equipment and then show the customer that, look, the parallel cable works the same as the original cable, therefore the original cable must have been good. Meanwhile, they've both spent a lot of time and are very frustrated. With the Real World Certifier, we put in the tools to find those problems quickly so both the cable installer can get on with other jobs and the end customer can get on with his job.
Well said. Thank you, Joe.